What's up, wall fans and common sensors? Welcome to another video feed of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And as you can probably tell from my voice, I am still dealing with this fun ear infection. I'm not hearing completely out of my left side. It's a lot of fun, but you know, we're gonna continue on, weather on, and get into episode 115. That's not where that should be. There we go. See, when I forget to set up certain things, I got to do it kind of on the fly here. There we go. All right. So all that being said, let's just get right into episode 115 while I still have at least a little bit of hearing on my left side here.
Who want to go tell it to the wall? Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, wall fans, common sensors, podcast consumers. Welcome to another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, and this is episode 115. And for those of you that were not watching the video feed, yes, I'm still having issues with the left side of my hearing, so I'm sure my voice is still a little bit off. It probably doesn't sound as bad to all of you as it does to me because I'm monitoring through my headphones through a side of my head that I cannot hear correctly. So bear with me. I'm going to do my best, and it is better than last week. It is still improving. It's just still there, but I wanted to get into episode 115, regardless of still dealing with this ear hearing issue. All right. That being said, let's get into our social plugs. You can keep up with us during episodes, after episodes, before episodes, whenever you so please, and you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's right, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's our official Facebook page. Make sure you like and follow that page for all kinds of great updates. We also have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall or at GoTellItToTheWall. Either one of those will take you straight to our YouTube channel, and you can check out all of our videos that get posted on a weekly basis on YouTube. It's not only our video feeds, but it's other clips, album reviews, mental health Monday stuff that we were doing for a long time. All that's right there on YouTube. So if you are a YouTube user, make sure you subscribe to our Go Tell It to the Wall channel. And of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean at SoCalSean. And I've been quite busy on the social side, not so much with my own personal one, but with another social and another Instagram account that I've had to be working on. So it's eating up a lot of my kind of Instagram time, but we do still have a lot of photos in the hopper that will be on the SoCal Sean account very soon. Those are mostly from shows and whatnot, so make sure you follow on Instagram so you get updated with that stuff. And then, of course, we also have SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. I always forget. It's literally, if you're watching the video feed, it's on the wall behind me, so you get it throughout the entire episode if you're watching the video feed. But make sure you bookmark that. Again, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That is going to not only have links to all those things I just mentioned, there's also exclusive content that only gets posted to the website. And in addition to that, if you want to help us out financially, there are two ways to do that through SeanO'RourkeLive.com. First one would be our Patreon campaign. If you're not familiar with Patreon, you should familiarize yourself, even if you're not going to support us financially, because it is a great way to connect with other creators and broadcasters and whatnot. And throw them a little money to show your support. But if you don't want to get into Patreon, you don't want to become a patron, you can also support us by picking up some Common Sense merch. The merch website links directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. All right, before we get into our digital trends, it is officially fall. I feel like I do this every year. It is officially fall, but California has not gotten the memo yet. Although it's not the crazy like 100-degree heat we were having recently, but it definitely doesn't quite feel like fall outside. And in fact, I was in Long Beach yesterday, which is usually a little cooler because it's closer to the ocean. It didn't even really feel like fall there, so it was kind of wild. But it is officially fall, and this is my yearly time when I say I am staring longingly at my flannels and at my hoodies, and hopefully in the next couple weeks I can start busting those out because I do enjoy a good zip hoodie and a good flannel. I mean, who doesn't? These are great things, but you cannot wear them in the summer when it's 100 degrees outside. So that's partially why I look forward to fall. It's one of my favorite seasons by far. And it is officially fall, though the weather is just not there yet. Maybe it is where you live. It is not there yet here in Southern California. All right, digital trends. I am going to talk about a subject I am not very familiar with. I could name maybe one song of hers, but it absolutely just dominated social platforms this afternoon, and that would be Taylor Swift. And it's not dominating social platforms because I talked about this before, where when she was touring, especially when she was in LA, all these photos of movie stars and other musicians and whatnot and actors were all spotted at the Taylor Swift show. This time, Taylor Swift was actually spotted somewhere, and it happened to be the Kansas City Chiefs game there in Kansas City. I know if you were a Taylor Swift fan, or even if you're a sports fan, or even neither of those, you might have just been hearing about it because it's big news, and that there's a player for the Kansas City football team who had kind of reached out to Taylor, and then there was rumors, and then they were like, no, there's nothing, and then it was, well, there's a report that they're talking and all these other things. And I am not even a fan of either one of them, not that I dislike either one of them, but even I was getting spoon-fed this information, so it's kind of hard to avoid. Today, she actually showed up at the football game, sitting in the luxury suite up there next to Travis Kelce's mother. So clearly there on the invite of Travis Kelce. They showed her multiple times, and of course, all of the social platforms went nuts. There was pictures of her, all kinds of crazy stuff, and clearly there is something going on. The one thing I did, and somebody did bring this up, they were like, if they're just talking and just started dating, that's actually a big step, almost a little awkward to be hanging out at a football game with the mother of the guy you'd kind of just started dating or talking to. But regardless of that, everyone went absolutely nuts, and social platforms couldn't take it. And it was so funny because I think I'd seen it after it already happened, but it was like a tweet from earlier, and someone tweeted, if Taylor Swift actually shows up to this football game, this site is going to be broken. I don't think it fully melted down, but it came damn close. And I'm curious, and I can't take credit for this because somebody else had actually brought it up on Twitter. I don't know who to credit. And I was kind of thinking along the same lines. I wonder how many people tuned in once they saw that Taylor Swift was actually at the game. And then what happened, and for those of you not familiar with the NFL, a lot of times if a game is getting out of hand, and I'm not talking, for those of you that are familiar with NFL, I'm not talking about the Miami Dolphins game. The Kansas City game started to get out of hand, and it was like 31-0, and they were dominating the Chicago Bears. So the network actually switched to a more competitive game. This is something that the networks will do with the NFL if the game is just not watchable. So I'm really curious to see the ratings spikes for that time slot on Fox, which was carrying, I believe it was either Fox or CBS. Those are the networks that carry the games during the day. If it spiked up and then went back down, or I find ratings fascinating. It's one of the things I geek out on a bit. So I'm really curious to see kind of how those ratings shifted once she was pictured. And I happened to be watching the game. I just had it on the TV. And before the game even started, they showed her in the suite. And I think she must have been on the big screen, too, because she jumped up and started waving. She was very excited to be there. So good for her. Nearly broke Twitter, but it is still functioning as far as I know. Maybe it's broken now. I don't know. But there's a new kind of power couple, I guess you could say. Not a very competitive game for her to watch, but you know, Travis Kelce got to show out a bit. And I am going to talk about Taylor Swift for this next digital trend, because about less than a week ago, it was National Voter Registration Day. And in the United States, we have a very low voter turnout compared to probably not all other countries, but many other countries around the world. So there's always a big push to get people registered to vote. And so we have this day, and it's, you know, it goes along the lines of National Cheeseburger Day. Who knows who comes up with these specific days, but that day did occur. And I want to give a big shout out and good on you to Taylor Swift, because I don't know if she tweeted or put on Instagram, but she's got like 300 million followers. I'm exaggerating that, but I don't think I'm exaggerating it by much. She has well over 250 million followers. Had tweeted or posted reminding people to register to vote. And what happened was, like, right after she posted that, they had a huge influx of voter registrations here in the United States of America. So I'm good on you, Taylor. What else I would like to see is leading up to actual election days, maybe some people that have this high amount of followers and whatnot can remind people to actually vote. Because it's one thing to be registered. You know, the voter registration is lower than the actual population here in the U.S., But then the voter turnout is always lower than the actual amount of people who are registered to vote. So it's one hurdle at a time, I guess. But good on you, Taylor, for getting people motivated to register to vote. All right, I don't know if you've seen this trend flying around. I want to say it started out as like a TikTok trend, but then it just permeated into all the other digital platforms. And this is, I don't even know exactly how it started, so don't quote me on exactly what's going on here. But it was ask a man in your life, a male in your life, how often they think about the Roman Empire, or it was either the Roman Empire or the fall of the Roman Empire. And actually, when I first heard about it, somebody posted in a Discord I'm in and said, does anyone know about this? And first was like, do people think about the fall of the Roman Empire? And it was like, wait, what? So, but then as I saw this, I saw it start blowing up, and then jokes about the Roman Empire and like the fall of the Roman Empire. The funny thing for me was, and I'll be honest, I don't usually think about the Roman Empire. It's not something I usually do. However, when this question was posed on Discord, I happened to be like in the middle of a Netflix documentary about the fall of the Roman Empire, or kind of the fall, but it was like 3 mini-series about 3 different emperors of Rome. So in that instance, I was like, well, yes, I have thought about it lately, but only because I'm watching I don't want to say shitty, but it was very stereotypical documentary that I was watching on Netflix. Like as I was eating, it was just something to watch, and it was interesting, but it just happened to coincide with when this actually became a trend. Honestly, I don't think most people are thinking about the fall of the Roman Empire, but maybe I'm completely wrong and I don't know exactly where that started. But it is a trend that is still going around, literally right now on the digital platforms. All right, moving along. The other thing going around, it's been kind of, and still trending now, but been trending for, I want to say like at least a week, and it was like, describe a strange interaction you've had with a famous person. Now, so of course, as usual, everything gets beat to death. You know, everyone thought they were breaking Taylor Swift being at the Kansas City game, and it's like, okay, this is the most watched professional sport in the United States. Everybody saw it. You don't need to tell us. We saw it. She was there. We saw it. But this, of course, people were posting over and over and over and over again, and certain accounts, that like to just overpost on Twitter are doing it. But it hit a point where it was like, then you're like, well, that's a flat out lie. Well, maybe that could be true. Well, and it turned into like, I don't know if you're describing actual interactions or if you're just making a joke of it. Either way, this is what's trending. One of the things trending right now, mostly made up stuff. I couldn't differentiate, but my guess was it was mostly made up stuff. But it did get me to thinking. I've had I live in Los Angeles. I worked for Disney Channel for 8 years. I have had many, many, many interactions with famous people. One of them, I often tell the story of how Billy Ray Cyrus introduced himself to me. And this is not Boot, Scoot, and Boogie Billy Ray Cyrus. This is Miley Cyrus's dad, Billy Ray Cyrus. Hannah Montana actor Billy Ray Cyrus introduced himself to me and thanked me for. So I've had many of these interactions, but one of the strange ones, and it's not strange because anyone made it awkward. It just happened to be where the conversation went. So while I was working at Disney, I'm not going to try to figure out the year right now, but it was right around when High School Musical 2 was coming out. And unless you lived under a rock or weren't alive at the time, you know how popular the High School Musical franchise was. And I am actually stopped at the gas station right next to the Disney Channel building. I don't know if I was getting gas, but I was a full-time smoker at the time. I was picking up a pack of cigarettes, and I look up, and also picking up a pack of cigarettes at this gas station is Kevin Smith, as you know, one of my absolute idols. He's the reason I went to film school, and I had met him briefly years before at one of the Silent Bob Speaks events, but he was like coming down a row of us, shook his hand, he signed my Clerks graphic novel, and that was about it. So I didn't really, so I'm like, hey, I'm going to say hi, and in fact, we were buying very similar cigarettes. His was just the light version of what I was getting. Don't smoke cigarettes, kids. It's terrible for you. Now we know. But back then, I was very much a full-time smoker. So we're talking for a couple minutes, and of course, I told him I'm also a cradle Catholic and how I appreciated Dogma and the way that he made that movie. And because we're right next to the Disney Channel building, I think he said first, like, oh, do you work for Disney Channel? And I was like, oh, yeah. I'm just on my way home, stopped here real quick. And so that, of course, because, as you know, he has a daughter who's older now, but at the time was quite young and was in the High School Musical demographic. So what happened was I ended up, instead of talking about other films, any of his other films or anything like that, we ended up talking about High School Musical and the popularity that is High School Musical because he had a daughter who was in that demographic at the time. So while it wasn't like embarrassing or strange or anything, I always think back to that moment of like, sweet, I talked to Kevin Smith about High School Musical instead of really millions of other things that we could have talked about. We ended up talking about High School Musical. All right, moving along, another famous person, and not interactions with them, but you've probably seen this trending, and this is another one that's currently being beaten to death, but I'm going to talk about it. And it's Kevin James, who you all know is an actor, but there is a picture of him, and it's clearly a stock photo. It's like a Getty image photo of him on the set of King of Queens, which was a long-running sitcom that Kevin James had. And everybody's using, and imagine the couple looking at you across the bar, memes and everything else, and this one grew so much more than that. But everybody has been using it like crazy. It's definitely getting overplayed. Some of the funnier ones I've seen are because he's kind of like smirking, and then it was like as I queue up 2 hours worth of ska on the jukebox and leave the bar or something like that. But that, I don't know how that started trending, but that's why you're seeing a ton of pictures of Kevin James on your social feeds, is because people are playing off of that trend and making up their own jokes to go along with it. And I'll admit they're kind of funny, but this is yet another trend that is just being beaten to death. And it's like the Simpsons meme, like, stop, he's already dead. And it's like, stop with these. It's dead. Like the first couple are funny, and then you're kind of like, great. There's the same picture of Kevin James in my Twitter feed here. All right, this one actually just happened today as I was prepping for the show, and has to do with the NFL. The Jets, the New York Jets, they're not playing well lately. Good old Aaron Rodgers there got hurt. I think we talked about that last episode, and he's out for the season. So they got a kid who plays quarterback probably about as well as I could if you just threw me in there. I mean, I'd probably break a bone, and he hasn't been breaking bones, but he's not playing very well. So Jets fans are noticeably frustrated, and there was a viral clip of this gentleman who's a Jets fan sitting at the game, and he starts yelling at something, probably yelling at the refs or whatever, and as he's yelling, his dentures start to fall out. This within minutes, it is all over the social platforms. I bet sports shows tomorrow morning, or sport analysis shows are going to pick it up. We're going to all have to see this poor guy again. But it really got me thinking. Always be careful, because it's these silly things that go viral. And people are going to forget about it in a week. That's the good thing about the speed of information now. It's there's cameras everywhere, so you do get caught a lot of times. And this could have happened to anybody. I don't know. I don't have dentures, so I don't know how easily that happens, but I assume it could have happened to anybody. It's just something that happens. But now, unfortunately, he is living on for a little while on the social platforms. So be careful what you're doing, out in public, especially if you're at like a show or a concert or, professional sporting event where there are just cameras everywhere. You're doing something silly, you're going to get caught doing it. So be aware of that. And you're probably going to see the poor guy in your social feeds over the next couple days until everyone moves on to something else. They're going to beat the hell out of that one, just like they're beating the hell out of the Kevin James photo and other stuff. All right, one more thing before we move on to mental health. Hashtag not my king. This is trending right now. I guess apparently within the past day or so, there was a protest at Buckingham Palace. It was people wearing shirts that spelled out not my king. So that, of course, started trending, and people used the hashtag not my king. So I wanted to point that, and everyone knows if you've listened to this podcast, I am a proud Irish American, first of all. Second of all, I don't believe in monarchy having to do with anything. We look at this whole dog and pony show when the king was crowned or whatever they call it. My stance is basically the same as the Hound from Game of Thrones, and that is fuck the king. So I'm in favor of not my king. I'm in favor of these protests, and I'm sick of any kind of monarchy out there that is just living off the backs of their citizens because of some stupid traditions and because of colonialism. There's not acceptable at all. All right, let's move on to some mental health. I want to talk about a couple things this week. something that really came to my attention, and I feel like we've touched on this before in the past, but came to my attention recently, and it is definitely something that I can personally attest to, and that is anxiety and worry kind of after social events. In fact, there's a popular meme featuring Rami Malek, who is the actor in the greatest television show of all time, Mr. Robot. He was also played Freddie Mercury in the Queen biopic and has gone on to do many successful things in television and film. But there's one of him as Freddie Mercury singing at the top of his lungs, and then it's side by side with what is clearly a shot from Mr. Robot, where it's him with a hoodie over his head and looking quite forlorn. And it's like me during the event, me after the event. And stuff like it is silly, trust me, I get that, but stuff like that can hit personally, and this is one that does hit personally, because this can be common for a lot of people for multiple reasons. Even if you don't suffer from a mental illness, this could just be something that kind of overtakes you when you have gone through, a long social event, a taxing social event. And a couple of those would be because your energy is depleted. So even if you don't have a mental health problem, maybe your energy is just depleted, and you need to kind of recharge that battery. We hear about that all the time. It's you don't want to, whether it's work or social interactions or fun stuff, you got to take a break from it once in a while. You got to rest. You got to let your body recharge, and you have to mentally let yourself recharge as well. Even if you physically, you feel okay, you're not exhausted or anything. Sometimes mentally you can be exhausted. And another reason would be overanalyzing interactions. This is what happens to a lot of people who do have mental health problems or a mental illness, is they will finish an event with featuring a bunch of social interaction, and this is something I'm guilty of. Get home and then overanalyze every little thing you have said, whereas you're sitting there analyzing those things, but the person you've said them to, chances are it wasn't even an embarrassing thing to begin with, or if it was moderately embarrassing, everybody's done thinking about it at that point. It's just really stuck in your head, and that is something I am very, very familiar with, because this is something that happens to me on almost a daily basis. And then also, if you prefer to be introverted or have a social anxiety, which is also something another category I fall into, is having the social anxiety. So first of all, don't beat yourself up and look at the positive side. Just because you've had a small thing that might bother you, and we joke, but it's true. Sometimes you can be kept up at night from some silly, embarrassing interaction you had like 6 years ago. There's nothing wrong with that, but the key is to not let that overtake kind of your entire mentality, not let it keep you from sleeping. I don't know the actual solution to that. I think I've talked about it before. I like to think of it as closing browser windows on a computer. So if it starts to come in, I shut that window, and it does help at times, but other times it doesn't, and people are always shocked when I tell them that I have crippling social anxiety, and I do, because here's the thing. I am very, very loud, very, very loud, but despite being loud, I overanalyze everything. I am what you would call an extroverted introvert. I like to be an introvert a little bit, but I am also loud and obnoxious, and people could say, well, you have a podcast, and people listen to you, and it's like, yeah, but nobody in this room right now. It's me talking to a wall, hence the title, Go Tell It to a Wall. It's it's just me in here. It also depends on the situation, which interestingly, I got into a conversation about this. I had planned on broaching this subject for this episode a week or two ago, because it had come to my attention again, and I'd seen a couple of articles about it, and it's something I very much relate to, and I know many other people do. But it actually came up in a similar but different light yesterday when I was at an event. I'm going to talk about that event when we get to entertainment news. And it was a friend of mine had brought up being like how they can be so much more outgoing. For example, at a punk show, a ska show, versus working in like a retail environment, or really working in any environment where you have to be in constant communication with clients or partners or people you work with. There's a huge difference there. You tend to be a little more comfortable in certain things. And it really got me thinking about the punk scene, because that is one for me that it is a lot easier, and it's a lot easier for other people. In fact, I talked to somebody who's a good friend and has a child who is a teenager, but it is special needs. And this teenager very much comes out of his shell at shows in the scene, because we're all kind of there for the same purpose. You become a family to an extent, and there, I know there are other examples of this, but this is to me a prime example, because not only are you there to enjoy the music and you're there because you have a common interest, but when it comes to certain scenes, and I'm sure, like I said, there's other things like this, and there's other things not quite like this, but you all kind of have the same ideals. You're all on the same page when it comes to equal rights and this kind of stuff, so it makes it a little easier to kind of open up, interact, have fun. And there are situations that I can think of where it comes close to that, but it's not the same. Like, let's say you're a sports fan, and you go to a baseball game, and everyone, and granted, there's going to be fans of both teams there, but let's say you're in your home city, and you go there, and majority of people there are cheering for that team along with you. So you have a focus. However, sports is so big and wide-reaching that let's say you are obviously, like let's say me, for example, I am pro women's rights, pro LGBTQ rights. You could be sitting next to someone who very much disagrees with you on that. Whereas when you're in a scene like the punk scene, especially here in Southern California, it gets a little tougher in Orange County. I get it. Don't hit me with those comments. I know, and it can depend on the band. But when you're in a close-knit situation, you all kind of agree on those things. So there's not that extra stress that there is when you have to interact with people. And it's people you know. That's the thing, is I always say I can be loud and obnoxious, and I am around people that I know. But when it comes to meeting new people, I am very, very quiet and reserved until I get to know you, and then you got to put up with my obnoxiousness. That's just how it is. So don't beat yourself up if this is something that you deal with. Know that it is perfectly normal. And I don't have, there is no one-shot solution for it. But I think, as with anything we talk about when it comes to mental health and mental illness, just that acknowledging it is the first step toward being able to deal with it in the future and being able to get rid of those intrusive thoughts. Like I said, that is one of my biggest problems with my obsessive compulsive disorder and obsessive anxiety disorder is intrusive thoughts, and it can be debilitating at times. And a lot of times social interactions just maximize that feeling, and I have to be very careful with how I'm treating myself afterward. So keep those things in mind, Wall fans. All right, let's move along to some positive news. I'm going to get a little water here. I'm drinking more water during the past couple episodes because my ear, and it's not even, my voice feels fine. It's not like a month ago when I completely lost my voice for like a week. I sound funny to myself, and I know I sound a little bit different to all of you, and I'm sure, like I said, it's not as bad as I sound to myself because the hearing is making me talk a little weird, but then I'm hearing myself differently because I can really only hear out of one side of my head right now. Made it quite the challenge to be at a show yesterday. I'm like, part of me was like, I'm just not going to put my earplugs in. I'm going to see if this loud music somehow blows out my ears and I'm no longer got the lack of hearing in my ears and the ringing from the tinnitus. It's like the ear infection, tinnitus, they came together. It's like that meme with the two people doing, with two arms in there. And it's like, yeah, that's what it is. Tinnitus and ear infection. Fuck Sean's hearing. That's basically what happened. All right, positive news. WGA, Writers Guild of America, we got some news this week that they have actually gone back to the negotiating table to talk about terms about a possible new contract for the Writers Guild. Now, this does not mean by any means that it is going to be figured out. And on top of that, we still have the SAG, Screen Actors Guild strike that is going on at the same time. So even if the WGA signs a new contract, the television and film will not be able to get back to work right away. Writers will be able to get back to work, and some stuff will, but you don't have actors. But it is good to see that we are seeing at least a little bit of forward progress. As usual, we 100% support unions, and it is movement in the right direction, despite not having any concrete stuff right now. And I'm hoping for progress so people can get back to work. I have so many friends that are out of work right now because they work in film and television. And even non-writers and actors Anybody that works on set right now, they cannot work because you don't have any material to work on. So a lot of people beyond actors and writers are out of work right now. But I also want to that sounds like, but I would encourage anybody that's voting on the new contract to not give in, especially on things that you originally started picketing for. And that's going to be important. So we'll follow this closely. Hopefully we can get people back to work. Personally, I'm not worried about getting my television shows or anything. I'm mostly concerned about people getting back to work and specifically personal friends of mine that are literally not able to work right now. All right, let's move on to some parenting. So kids and escalators. And before I get into this, yes, insert typical Mallrats joke. All of my Kevin Smith fan listeners are like, that kid is on the escalator again. Yes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about quite the opposite here. Something, and I don't know if other parents can relate to this, if it's something she'll grow out of. Personally, sometimes I look at a giant escalator and I'm like, whoa, it takes me a second to get on that bad boy. And I've seen a couple viral videos actually of adults who don't know how to navigate an escalator and then have someone help them. But my kid, not like a fear of escalators. She will get on them, but does not like the escalators at all. If there's an elevator nearby, we have to try to find the elevator. She won't deal with the escalators. And oddly, and I'm curious if there's something psychological, not for her, just her personally, but just in general psychologically, she's fine going up an escalator. But when it's going down, I've found myself having to carry my kid as we ride on the escalator if we're going down. That one freaks her out so much more than going up. So I wonder if there is something, again, not just to my kid, but to people in general. Like, is it more intimidating going down an escalator as opposed to up? I don't know, but it is interesting to say the least. All right, kids. Laugh. Let me just laugh to myself right now. Kids hearing and listening, because I can't hear right now. This is kind of always an ongoing joke, but I've been living it so much lately. So my kid, I can be in the same room, and it will take me 5 times of asking my kid to just like pick something up. And then it's even stuff like there's literally no wrong answer. Like, would you like some water? Would you? And I have to ask like 5 times. And it's like, kid, there's literally no wrong answer. Just give me a yes or no. But it's like she can't hear. But then there's other situations that let me know, no, she can hear perfectly fine. Because I can say things very loud and take me 5 to 10 times in the same room. But man, if you whisper something from like the other side of the house, she will come running as if she has the hearing of a bat. It is utterly ridiculous. So I genuinely, when she hit this stage of not listening, I was like, do we need to get her hearing checked? Because like I'm asking her, like, do you want a cup of water? Like, it's not like I'm asking her to do something. Like, it's like, can I bring you a cup of water? And it's like, no answer. But clearly, based on the other side of it, there's no problem with the actual hearing. And it's just a reminder for all of you out there, not even just parents, non-parents. If you are around children of a certain age, they hear everything. They absorb everything. They're going to ask you about it. So make sure you're careful about what you're saying in front of your kids. This is what we talked about last episode when my kid was finally hit the age where the anniversary of 9/11 came around, and she had heard something and came and asked my wife and I about it. And so make sure, again, even if you don't have kids, if you are near kids, they hear everything. They will repeat it. They will ask you about it. So be careful what you are saying in front of kids. And I'm not just talking about curse words. I'm talking like news stories or whatever else. Let's say you're talking gossip about some neighbor down the street. They're going to hear it. Be aware of that. May not seem like they're hearing you all the time, but they are. Trust me on that. Oh, man. Sleepover madness. My kid, she's at that age where it's sleepover time, and she's had a couple of them. She's had a couple of them here, a couple of them at another friend's house. But, man, we just had one on Friday. And first of all, this was coming off the heels of like their bi-weekly Girl Scout meeting. So the kids are all fired up when they come home. They get home at 8 o'clock, and my wife, she usually takes the Girl Scouts, and she volunteers a bit with Girl Scouts. I rarely am I the one taking my kid. But they come walking in the door, the 3 of them, and I look at my kid, and she's eating a Fun Dip, For those, which I thought was pretty universally known, but for those of you that don't know what a Fun Dip is, it's the stick. It's like it's a sugar stick, and then you take that stick and you dip it into sugar, literal colored sugar, and you eat it. It's been around forever. I used to get them from the ice cream man when I was a kid. It's really not great for you. 8 o'clock at night, my kid's eating one of these, so I'm going, and right away I'm like, well, this is not going to be smooth. So then we got to get them all set up, and basically it's take the usual stalling at bedtime and multiply it by 2. For those of you that have been around kids at bedtime or have kids, like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. So you do that. Okay. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. So it's like double those things. Now, it's well worth it for the kids to enjoy themselves and have fun. I joke and I complain, but it's really not a big deal. I do find it amusing. That is just the stalling times 2. And then, of course, they're up later, but then they don't sleep in any later. You're still up and I swear, when my kid has a sleepover, she's up earlier than she would be if there was no other kid here, which I'm sure that makes sense in some fashion, but that's really what happens from that side of things. All right, all of you parents out there, this is for everyone, specifically in Southern California, because this just popped up in my feed recently, and I think it starts in October, but it's here in LA. It is a Bluey interactive event. It's called Bluey Camp Bluey or something like that. It is a fully immersive, interactive grassroots event where it looks like you go through the Bluey house, all kinds of other cool stuff that you would see in the show. Personally, I would go by myself, but I will be looking to take my kid. And it looks like it is a touring situation, so it's probably going to leave LA and go elsewhere. And so I would encourage you parents out there, or non-parents, if you're just a Bluey fan like myself, know that could be coming to your local city. And like I said, I'll be looking to take my kid and myself. I'm just going to have my wife take my kid and me. Like, oh, okay, no, this is for me too. I'm going to enjoy this. All right, one more thing in parenting. I want to get a little serious here for a sec, because it just happened again the other day. And that is crossing guards at schools. I live in Los Angeles. I live in a very urban part of Los Angeles. There are a lot of cars, a lot of houses. There are apartment buildings, not on my street, but nearby. There are tons of apartment buildings, businesses, trucks coming by, all kinds of stuff. And there's a couple of, I walk my kid to school every day. We live close enough to the school that it's almost not worth getting in the car, because it just takes longer to get in and then out of the car, unless it's like pouring rain. Plus the dog gets a walk. So we walk to school. And we've had issues at 2 of the crossing areas right near the school. I've brought this up multiple times. In fact, and this is 3 years, my kid's 3rd year going to this school. And the first year we took her very early on. I'm walking her to school. Thank God we didn't have a dog at that point. It was just me and her. And honest to God, I had to push my child and I was still holding her, but I had to push her forward because I'm in the middle of a fucking intersection. A lined yellow intersection next to an elementary school. And this guy just decides to go because he's not looking. Now, fortunately, he did stop, but I swear to God, the car kind of brushed up against me, and I had to move out of the way and move my child out of the way. Had it been a child walking by themselves who was not quite as visible, they probably would have been hit. That was one of the worst ones. It's happened multiple times where a car will start to pull out. I've gotten to the point where I yell at them. And I'll be honest, in that situation where the guy literally almost hit me and my kid, I smacked his car. And that was only the first time. So imagine how much this has been building up. And I've been asking constantly for crossing guards. And it happened again the other day. And this guy starts, and it's me and my dog going to pick up my kid. But on the other side, of the street, we're both walking the same direction, is another parent with a very small child. And this car starts to pull out into the intersection. Literally, as I'm already in the intersection, starts to pull into the intersection. And his window's down. So I was like, dude, calm down, pay attention. This is school right here. There are kids everywhere. And he kind of backs up and just sits there. And I eyeballed him, because then I had to cross the next intersection. We're kind of diagonal from the school. So I'm eyeballing him like, you pay attention. It is a fucking school. If you don't want to pay attention, go drive a different road. Don't mess with the school intersections. So it's a good 4 or 5 minutes, and I'm walking the dog, and as he must have thought he was so brilliant. Like, it took him this 5 minutes to come up with it, and he kind of slows down as he's driving by me, and he goes, I can't even remember exactly what it was. He's like, "Oh, you sound like a kid, bitch." And I was like, so I just turned to him and I was like, "Learn to fucking drive, asshole." And he drove off. He was so proud of himself, and then realized, like, that didn't sound as cool as it did in my head. And I'm like, just fucking move along. Say, "I'm sorry," and fucking move along. And that's just 2 examples. There have been dozens of examples. And in fact, in that same intersection, before my child started going to this school, I want to say pre-COVID, a grandmother was killed walking her grandkids to school. The kids were hurt. The grandmother was killed. Last year, we had a young child hit at the other intersection that's right by the school. I have been asking, this is going on into our 3rd year. We are in our 3rd year of school. I have been asking for crossing guards for 3 years. And I know for a fact the principal of our school has been asking for crossing guards for possibly even longer than 3 years. And I put this in parenting because I know any parent out there or any decent human being can relate. We need to make sure kids are safe. So I'm calling out right now, Los Angeles Unified School District and the city of fucking Los Angeles. It's time to get our goddamn crossing guards back up here. And don't tell me, "Oh, we're short-staffed on crossing guards." Hire more crossing guards. You're telling me there aren't people out there in Los Angeles right now that would love to have a job as a crossing guard? Of course, there are plenty of them out there. But all this bureaucracy and all this bullshit gets put ahead of the safety of our children. And what's going to happen is a kid is going to get killed because someone is not paying attention. And this just turned into like the old school weekly rant. And for the love of God, if you're going to get in a fucking car, so I've talked about this before. I've posted about this. I'm a runner. I haven't been running in many years because I get so busy, but there are times when I'm running multiple days a week. I have literally hurdled fucking cars. I've ended up on the hood of cars who are not paying attention. You have to have your head on a swivel. Thing is, I'm 6'3". I'm big enough to be able to do that, and they eventually see me. So if you're going to get in a car, stop at a fucking stop sign. Don't roll through it. And especially if there are kids around and it's a school, take your time. There's no reason to be rolling through stop signs, barely doing this whole California stop bullshit that I've been hearing about my entire life. Stop, look around, let people fully cross the street, then move along. I cannot express to you fully how ridiculously sick I am of this situation that I deal with on a daily basis. And the city does nothing, the school district does nothing. It's fucking infuriating. Anyway. It's actually a good segue into common sense because common sense says we make sure our kids are fucking safe. For the love of God. It makes me sick. Absolutely sick. I did laugh at the guy who thought he was so clever. You sound like a kid. No, I sound like a goddamn parent who doesn't want kids to get hit. Like, come on now. All right, common sense. And this actually did segue right into that. We had a hit and run here in the Los Angeles area over the weekend. A Corvette plowed into someone, killed them, and then sped off and didn't stop or do anything. And we're getting reports that was most likely from street racing, a couple of cars that were racing down the road. And I hate to sound like the prude one, but I've seen too much of it. See, I grew up in San Diego in the 90s. San Diego in the 90s, a lot of people, especially with rich families, thought they were in fucking Fast and Furious. So they had, they'd set up these cars and then they'd be out on the roads racing and stuff. And in fact, it got so crazy that down there, what was Qualcomm Stadium, now it's gone, they actually had legal car racing down there a lot of times because they would let people come down. I believe you had to have a helmet. I never went. I didn't give a shit about this car racing stuff. In fact, I got into it with a lot of these guys because they, for some reason, didn't like me. Sorry I stole your girlfriend, dude, but she's just not into cars, man. This is still going on to this day. We have Fast and Furious 82 coming out soon, probably, or one of those. But I see just way too much of it, and people got to knock it off. It's not worth showing, oh, my car's faster or whatever. And in fact, this happened to me a few weeks ago. I was driving home from a show late at night, not like super late. It was probably like between 11 and midnight, and I'm driving on the 5. and two of these big, like, I don't know, Chargers or, those stupid muscle cars that, and no offense if you like to drive a Charger. I don't care about these stupid muscle cars unless maybe if it's a classic car. But there's like these new versions, the Dodge somethings or whatever. And two of them start racing, and we're not talking like the freeway's empty and they're racing. They're weaving in and out. And I saw them coming up behind me and then next to me, and then one of them decided to come completely over to my side and almost hit me to the point that I had to swerve into the carpool lane. I was like, shit, I'm breaking the law because I don't have another person in the car right now, and I'm going over the double line for the carpool. But I was like, if a police officer pulls me over, I'm going to berate them and tell them to go follow those fucking cars because they're racing down the freeway, being maniacs. And it's Los Angeles. There's always traffic. There was a decent amount of traffic. We were not far from Disneyland. People were leaving Disneyland at the time. But that, that's what people have, this mentality of nobody else matters. Well, you know what? You don't fucking matter. That's the thing. Have some compassion. Have some common sense. Stop doing things like racing and running over people and everything else. And this person that owned the Corvette, they're going to find that person eventually. And I hope they literally throw the book at him. All right, NFTs. We're finding out now they're mostly worthless. That's right. Who could have known? Maybe like everybody that talked about it. We talked about NFTs here, like when they first came out, NFTs and whatever the other. You don't even hear about the other thing anymore. Cryptocurrency or whatever, Bitcoin and all that other stuff. We're getting reports now that about 95% of NFTs are completely worthless now. Shocking, I know. So those ape things that people were paying thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars for, worthless. You got yourself a cool little sketch there. Like, here, let me sketch a happy face on a piece of paper. It's probably worth more than your silly ape NFT. Now, of course, I had to make that confession like, a year or two ago? Well, over a year ago at least. I do own an NFT. However, I can attest to the fact that my NFT has more than paid for itself. I've gotten free stuff from Less Than Jake. I finally threw one of the stickers. That was a fan club exclusive where you had to buy an NFT, but I paid like $30. And then this last tour, if you were a fan club member, you got 10% off all merch. So my NFT has paid for itself. I just wanted to be in the fan club, but people that bought them as investments and paid tens of thousands. And now, if you paid $20 for one as an investment, like it's kind of like, well, it's like going to a casino. Like, well, lost that $20. But the people that paid tens of thousands of dollars, God, I feel bad a little bit, but it's also like, really, you thought that was worth spending that much money on? No, no, it was not. And now we see proof that it was not. All right, flash mob robbery outrage. We've been getting a lot of these in Los Angeles. I'm sure they're happening in other cities and states as well, but it's such a high population here that they're happening like crazy. And it tends to be designers and department stores that are people are running in, smash and grab and then running out. And there has been quite the outrage over this recently because it's been happening a lot. And I understand the outrage. But it has hit a point of outrage where like politicians are starting task forces, looking into it and all this other stuff. And I want to make this clear. By no means am I saying we should not look into these things. Should not follow up, should not treat it as a crime by any means. But what happens is we are talking about large businesses, luxury businesses that have insurance. So when those robberies happen, insurance is covering their robberies. I'm no way condoning it. But if someone's getting robbed, it's better off that it is a business who is not going to lose money over it. So all this outrage for these flash mob robberies and stuff, and then you have the people trying to stop them and stuff. It's like, just don't stop them. We've talked about this before. You work for a retail company, they tell you don't try to stop a shoplifter. Just let them go. Let them go. That's it. But what rubs me wrong about this is we've had rashes of other things around Los Angeles. In fact, lately, a lot of food vendors have been getting robbed. We're talking about the food vendors on the street who are supporting themselves. Most likely don't have a giant insurance company behind them that's going to pay for the money that has been stolen from them or the product that's been stolen from them. But we don't hear the outrage about that at all. And that's kind of a great example of the United States and the world we live in. We have this outrage because we want to defend Nordstrom or Louis Vuitton or whatever other Burberry, these luxury brands that are selling you something that costs them $10 and they're selling it to you for $10,000. And then insurance is covering their losses anyway. So you have that. But then nobody gets outraged over street vendors. And in fact, a couple years ago, right before COVID, and I chuckle because and it's true. Highland Park is like the land of coffee shops and hair salons. We just have an inordinate amount of hair salons like in the neighborhood. What happened was there was armed robberies happening at all the salons like up and down the streets here in Highland Park. Nowhere near that outrage. In fact, it wasn't even like a big news story. It was more just like local because we live in the neighborhood. No outrage there. We need to balance out our priorities here. And this is why you get outrage from people who are so overlooked. And instead, we're taking care of corporate America and the super wealthy people in this country. We really have our priorities fucking backward when it comes to that. And again, like I said, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should do that, and nobody should be robbing anything, with the exception. You see someone taking a loaf of bread out of a grocery store, you shut your fucking mouth. They're obviously trying to feed someone. I'm not saying, so we shouldn't be doing any of it, but the outrage and the disproportionate where that outrage goes is what drives me absolutely nuts. All right, Del Taco brisket. I guarantee there's people in Texas are like, what the fuck? Del Taco brisket. This is something they just announced, and I love Del Taco. I don't eat there a lot, but I enjoy their cheeseburgers. I like their quesadillas. I like their tacos, and they have French fries. It's fantastic. But I did kind of laugh, and I get, maybe if you're in an area where you can't get good brisket, maybe try the Del Taco brisket. But the reason I laughed and the reason I put this in common sense is the Del Taco that's closest to me is literally like a block and a half from a fantastic barbecue place. So I can only, which might actually work in their favor, because maybe you're rolling up to that Del Taco, you're like, ooh, brisket, I want to try this brisket, and you're smelling the barbecue place that's a block and a half away. You're like, oh, it smells fantastic. Then you get it, and you're like, oh, that wasn't what I was quite looking for. So good luck, Del Taco. But for me, I got a barbecue place a block and a half away, and it's fantastic. I'll be getting my brisket there, as I usually do. All right, the hearing is still somewhat here. But let's get into a couple entertainment news things, and then we're going to call it an episode for 1:15. I got to go eat some dinner with my family here. Oh, this microphone. My microphone's out of whack. That's all right. I can fix that later. All right, we just had an announcement this morning. The Super Bowl halftime performer for the next Super Bowl, which will be in February of 2024, is actually going to be Usher. So for those of you that are Usher fans, you can look forward to that. And people went crazy on social media guessing which songs he would do. And I'm sure other people will be added. It's never just one person. But Usher will be the main one. And here's a reminder for all of you out there that don't know this. The artist that plays the Super Bowl halftime show actually pays the NFL for the opportunity to play the Super Bowl halftime show. They don't get paid. They pay to do it. For those of you that were not aware of that. But it will be Usher. There in February 2024. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. I found myself down a rabbit hole. So what happened was, for those of you not familiar with, well, really, everyone knows what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is. And we've had multiple iterations over the years. Nickelodeon now owns a good part of it. We just had a movie come out from Seth Rogen, which I plan on watching very soon now that it's on streaming. Very, very different iterations. But the original concept for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was not very kid-friendly. So if you go back to the original comics from the 80s, and it's not terrible, but it is definitely more violent than you would see in the cartoon or the movies, even the movies that we had when I was a kid. Now, since then, I think it's even more, although the cartoon from the late 80s, early 90s was quite tame. But they put out a new one called The Last Ronin, which it's a newer comic, but it's in the vein of those original 80s comics. So I decided, and I've read some, over the years, not necessarily in order, but I decided that I was going to read them in order, and you can buy them like in volumes, so it'll have like 7 or 8 of the comic books in that one volume. And I got the first one, and I've been really enjoying it. And I'm familiar with some of it because, like I said, I had read some, back in the really the 90s when everyone discovered like, oh, it wasn't originally just a toy line and this cartoon. So anyway, I I bought the first one, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to read them in order, and then I'm going to order, The Last Ronin and read that. And I love my Kindle, but it's comics. It's tough to read comics on a Kindle. So I went to order volume 2 because I'm just about done with volume 1. Sold out everywhere. So I went on this even further down the rabbit hole, and I just went crazy, and I was like, let me buy each one that's available right now before they sell out. And then I've been waiting for, there's like three out of 7 that I have not been able to track down the actual print books. They're not hardcover, but they're soft cover. They're print, comic books. The one thing I will do is they are available on Kindle. So in order to actually read them in order, I'm probably going to end up getting the Kindle ones, but I'm hoping that these will be reprinted again, and I'll probably put them on the bookshelf behind me. Let's see if I can convince my wife to move these 56 Harry Potter books she's got, all the hardcover Harry Potter books. And I remember when all the stuff came down with what's her name, the author or whatever, I was so excited. I was like, can we put these books somewhere else now? And my wife's like, no. She's a bit of a Harry Potter fan, despite obviously disagreeing with whatever her name is, the author, who's a homophobic asshole these days. All right, new Blink-182 tracks. I mentioned last episode that there was a new track coming out last week. They actually ended up releasing 2 tracks. One of them had a full music video. One of the tracks was okay. The other track, the music video, and it's One More Time, and I believe that's the title track for the album. The video, very nostalgic for those of you that grew up with Blink-182. Although, weirdly, they made it nostalgic back to 99, despite the fact that they've been around since, 94. They were just like, forget that other drummer guy we had. We're just going to focus on when we had this guy, Travis, who overdrums like crazy. But I digress. Very nostalgic music video. Song, not good. Not good. Now, if you enjoyed the song, because a lot of people I saw in my feed did, if you liked it, by all means. But I just had zero interest in the One More Time song. The video was mildly interesting to me just because I was like, oh, that's Adam's song. Oh, that's I Miss You. Oh, that's all the small things. Like, whatever, But it's not enough to be like, this is fantastic. And I expect a very emo album. If you go through kind of Blink's album list, they were not emo at all to start with. I mean, you could say maybe a little bit of a feel with their first couple albums. Third album got a little bit into it. Fourth album kind of came out of that a little bit. And then their self-titled album, really very emo. And then interestingly, they still had that emo. But when Skiba came on, you got a little more of the nostalgic, like pop punk stuff. And I have a feeling now with Tom back in, we're going to get a very, very, very emo album when October rolls around and Blink puts out their newest album, rather. All right, one more thing, and then we're going to wrap it up with episode 115. Very happy birthday to Myra from Bad Cop, Bad Cop, the drummer of Bad Cop, Bad Cop. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have noticed on her actual birthday, which was last week, it was like I want to say Thursday, but her actual date of birth, they did utilize one of my photos that I took of Myra. It's one I'm actually very proud of. And the Bad Cop, whoever was running the socials, at that very moment, used my photo along with some others to wish a happy birthday to Myra. And she actually, because it was a milestone birthday, threw together a private birthday event at Alex's Bar. I had the privilege of attending yesterday. 3 bands played. Of course, Bad Cop played the Venomous Pinks. For those of you watching the video, I'm wearing one of their newest designs for the Venomous Pinks, created by the uber-talented Paul Smith of Zombie Teeth Clothing, and The Last Gang. All 3 played. It was a great time. Huge shout out to Paul, Myra's husband. I know he did a lot of extra work to get things organized. Brought out tacos for everybody. There was like vegan sandwiches, all kinds of great stuff. Saw a lot of friends. They did some Myra-specific drinks, which I didn't drink because I'm really more of a beer drinker, but they're fancy drinks. Like there's a Myra Spritz, which I believe was a take on an Aperol Spritz. So very happy birthday to Myra. Shout out to everyone who helped make her birthday awesome. It seemed like she had a good time. I did nothing except show up and say happy birthday. In fact, I bought her a little something for her birthday, but it didn't arrive on time, so I didn't even get to give her that. I will say, while they were playing, Myra was without a drink on stage and requested a Myra Spritz, so I did participate by running to the bar, picking up a Myra Spritz, and then running it over to the stage and handing it to her as she was playing drums. Not as she was literally playing. I stood there for a few minutes just holding this drink. All right, when the song's over, I'm going to walk it up because she's drumming and she cannot take it out of my hand. And then I'll just look like an idiot standing on the stage next to Lynn. So, song finished. I brought it up. She was very thankful. And I think everyone had a good time. And like I said, it seems like Myra also had a very, very, very good birthday party. And happy birthday. It was so funny, too. Happy birthday to Danielle, Stacy D. Like, that was the funny thing is I show up and good friends, there's a couple of good friends that are married, and Danielle and Jason. And Jason's like, oh, and I saw him first, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's actually Danielle's birthday today. I was like, wait, what? So then, which was a good thing, because I hadn't said hi, so I was like, hey, happy birthday. And she was kind of like, yeah. And she wasn't like upset, but it was just extra funny because she's like, yeah, it's my birthday and I'm coming to a birthday party that's not actually on their birthday. But they had some plans for after the thing. And then it was actually Stacy D's birthday as well, who was in Bad Cop, as you should know. But hers wasn't quite as milestone of a birthday. I told her happy birthday too. But she's like, it's not as milestone as Myra's. So, it's like, but I was like, who else's birthday is it today? Anybody else? Let's, it was pretty funny. All right. On that note, we're going to call it an episode for episode 115. I don't even know what shows we have coming up soon, but I know there is some stuff coming up that you can catch me at. Yeah, I don't have that stuff right in front of me. I got to look at my calendar. Still can't hear. Been a little busy today. I'll update everyone with that on the socials. We should be back next week. Same wall place, same wall time. I am feeling better. Hopefully it's just going to continue to get better. And maybe my wife keeps telling me to drink tea. I'm not a big tea drinker. I don't mind it, but I'm not in the habit of it. So maybe I'll drink some tea and see if that helps with the hearing issue. But I expect we will be back next Sunday with the newest episode of Common Sense Sundays, barring any scheduling conflicts. And I can't imagine my hearing is going to get worse. It is gradually getting better. It's just taking forever. And in the meantime, make sure you follow us on all the digital platforms. First one being facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Also, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall or @GoTellItToTheWall. And my personal Instagram account, which is @SoCalSean, SoCalSean, @SoCalSean. And make sure you bookmark SeanO'RourkeLive.com to find links to those things, as well as exclusive content and links to our Patreon campaign and our merch website if you want to support us financially through either one of those avenues. All right. This has been episode 115 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And remember, Wall fans, Common Sensors, until next time, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you go, and especially no matter why you are doing it, always use common sense.